going. Start. Muhammad, you ready? Muhammad, you ready? You ready? Salawat. I'd like to welcome you all to the AMI public discussion called Ask Ramadan. And before we start, I'd like to welcome Brother Muhammad Moti, who will recite Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. أياما معدودات، فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر، وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين، فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له، وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه، ومن كان مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر، يريد الله بكم اليسر ولا يريد بكم العسر، ولتكملوا العدة ولتكبروا الله على ما هداكم ولعلكم تشكرون. وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداع إذا دعان، فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may guard against evil. For a certain number of days, but whoever among you is sick or on a journey, then he shall fast a like number of other days, and those who are not able to do it may effect a redemption by feeding a poor man. So whoever does good spontaneously, it is better for him, and that you fast is better for you if you know. The month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was revealed, a guidance to men and clear proofs of the guidance and the distinction. Therefore, whoever of you is present in the month, he shall fast therein. And whoever is sick or upon a journey, then he shall fast a like number of other days. Allah desires for you ease, and He does not desire for you difficulty. And He desires that you should complete the number and that you should exalt the greatness of Allah for His having guided you, and that you may give thanks. And when my servants ask you concerning me, then surely I am very near. I answer the prayer of the supplicant when he calls on me. So they should answer my call and believe in me, that they may walk in the right way. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu.
Thank you all very much for coming today. The subject of the discussion today is called Ask Ramadan. And in normal situations, I'd ask you all to switch your mobile phones off, but today I'm asking you to switch them on. Use Twitter, the hashtag Ask Ramadan, and inshallah it'll come up on the screen. The program for today is going to be quite interesting, inshallah. We'll start off with a short introduction by myself, which I'm starting right now, followed by a talk by Sheikh Arif, followed by one by Sayyid Muhammad Naqvi, and we'll have some question and answers, time for question and answers after that. We'll then have some closing remarks by the scholars, and then we'll have suhoor, inshallah. So before starting, I'd like to convey a couple of apologies. Ayatollah Muhakkik Damad and Ayatollah Nobahar are not able to make it today. Similarly, Sheikh Mirza is not able to make it today. He's feeling a bit unwell. Inshallah, we pray for his quick recovery. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sheikh Arif to give a short talk. I'm not entirely sure whether I need a full introduction for him, but I have one here just in case. People don't know who Sheikh Arif is? No? Okay, everyone knows who Sheikh Arif is, so let's welcome him. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great shame that Ayatollah Muhakkik could not join us because his internet connection at his home is not sound, and hence he did not feel that it was right for him to be here with the connection breaking every few seconds. Had he been here, his deliberations on the whole issue of fasting would have assisted us a great deal in understanding the overall ethos of fast and how he sees the fast as a practice within the Muslim world when spread beyond the Middle Eastern regions. Now, of course, we are talking about Ramadan in a very general way, but I know that people are dying to hear about fast within the modern world and the modern context, so I will not beat around the bush too much and try and get to the meaty debate. Now, Ramadan is not only a practice for the individual, but it is a communal practice. If we look at the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O you who believe, are prescribed upon you the fasts as they were prescribed upon those before you, so that you may become God mindful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing the Muslim body as the Muslim body. Now, before going anywhere, just to substantiate this point, that it is as much a Muslim lifestyle and Muslim collective spirituality and social spirituality as it is an individual practice and individual source of spirituality, we can see that the whole community is being addressed, and the Prophet created this lifestyle of ease during the month of Ramadan and culture of ease. He stated that your sleeping in the month of Ramadan is a form of devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Imams after the Prophet, they stated that any exercise, any activity that weakens the body is any activity that weakens the body to the extent of sitting within the water that weakens and drains the body is makruh, abominable or undesirable during the month of Ramadan. In a similar way, we find that the time of trade changes and the lifestyle of people are modified around the whole issue of fast, so that fasting becomes an easier and a bearable task, which is then meant to be productive. And in addition to this, we also have the evening prayers that are highly recommended in congregation or people to perform on their own. And of course, the recommendation of opening the fast together, feeding other, and the sawab that are accompanied by them. Now, I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's a communal act, just like the prayer. We have command for the individual prayer, but when it comes to communal, collective spirituality, we are always commanded to pray together as a body and as a community. There's a reason for why I have said this right now, and I will come to it in just a little while. In Islam, from the Imami perspective, by Imami we mean the Shia Ithna Ashari perspective, we have this golden principle that the laws of God are rationally based and are value-based and are productive. What does that mean? It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not issue any law, but that it has value inside it. And on top of that, that value is rationally discernible, to the extent that Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi has stated that if Allah had not informed you of the values within His law, your minds would eventually have uncovered and discovered those values entailed within the law. So every law that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives is a productive law. It's a value-based law, and reason can deduce the value of that law given the experience that the reason will encounter in the process of life. So that's something else that we need to bear in mind as we go into this discussion. Now, the practice of fast, when it came initially, it seems very much contrary to the deliberations of Ayatollah Tabatabai, contrary to his deliberations, I'm saying, because he feels these verses have come back to back, but when we read these verses, we feel that they haven't come back to back. Certain verses are immediately modifying those before them. So now, when we read the broader literature of the occasions of revelation of these verses, we find, and the verse actually carries that context with it, the first verse that we just recited, that fasting was already a practice prescribed to others prior to the coming of Islam. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Prescribed upon you are fasts as they were prescribed upon those before you. So fasts already existed. These verses initially came in an existing context, and therefore the fasts that were practiced prior to the coming of these verses were the fasts that were known to those people, and we find certain exegetical evidences to substantiate this point. The fasts that were practiced prior to Islam were fasts, in some tafasir we find, in which man were allowed, or people were allowed to eat one meal at night prior to falling asleep. But if they fell asleep, they forfeited their night meal. And people throughout the days of fasting were not allowed to not only consume food or drink, but were not allowed to consort with their spouses. Now, if you can bear that in mind, then we read this verse as we go into it slowly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, O you who believe, are prescribed upon you fasts, as they were prescribed upon people before you, so that you may become God mindful. And that's the value in there. By abstaining, we become more spiritual, and I think it's a known fact, we all know. Abstention makes us more spiritual. Cutting off relation with matter brings about that finer spirited understanding of world and the self and God. However, Allah does not describe the nature of fast. He just says, fasting have been prescribed upon you. Now the verse comes, ayyaman ma'adudat, a number of days. And therefore, whoever is sick or upon travel, then let them fast a number of equal days outside those prescribed days. And those people who find fast very difficult and arduous, then let them expiate by feeding a poor person. And he who spontaneously does good, then that would be good for them. But if you were to fast, then that is better for you. Now I feel that these two verses came in an already established context. A number of days. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His Quran does not needlessly repeat Himself unless there is some value in that repetition or there is something new that is added. Now if you go to the verse that immediately follows it, and this says to us that these verses were not revealed one after another, but there was a pause, and then the verse was revealed to then modify the whole issue of fast. We get this: Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, the month of Ramadan in which the Quran has been revealed. Hudal linnas wa bayyinatin min al-huda wal furqan, a source of guidance for people and a clear sign and a distinction. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ, so therefore he who observes the month among you. Now Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi's hadith says Shahida means he who is present in his hometown. He, and that's what the translation says, but that's not the real translation. The word Shahida means he who witnesses it. So it could mean witnessing by being at home and not on travel. Whatever the case. وَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ, he who witnesses the shahr, then let him fast. Now look at this repetition. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, and he who is unwell or on travel, then let them fast another set of days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not needlessly repeat Himself. Can you see that? In the verse above, He says, أَيَّامٌ مَعْدُودَاتٌ فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Why would you need to repeat that? Can you see that? So that in itself shows that there was a context for those two verses that have gone, and then a law came in to give the identity to a Muslim to fast in the month of Ramadan as opposed to any prescribed days that were being practiced prior to this injunction in Islam. That becomes quite evident. Yuridullah bikumul yusr wala yurid bikumul usr. Allah wishes ease for you. Allah does not wish harshness or hardship for you. Now, I'm going to come back to this point of ease and hardship. Now, if we finish this verse, وَلَتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ وَلَتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ, and so that you may complete the whole prescribed number of days, and then you might do, and that you may do takbir of Allah, and that's why on the day of Eid we chant the takbirat, don't we? Because of this verse. This verse makes it incumbent upon us to do those takbirat on the day of Eid. Now, there is a verse after that, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي, leave that to one side because it's not directly relevant to it. Then there comes this verse. Now it's amazing, in which Allah says, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. It is permissible for you on the night of Ramadan to consort with your spouses. هُنَّ لِبَاسٌ لَكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لِبَاسٌ لَهُنَّ. They are your garments, you are their garments. عَلِمَ اللَّهُ أَنَّكُمْ كُنْتُمْ تَخْتَانُونَ أَنفُسَكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَعَفَى عَنْكُمْ. Allah knew you were being disloyal to yourselves, so He has forgiven you and pardoned you. Why is He saying this? Because the original law of fast that they were following, they were not allowed to come near to their spouses. But the youths of the community were consorting with their wives. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah knows that you are being disloyal. Now, as opposed to reprimanding them, what is Allah doing? He is giving them ease instead. Can you see that? Allah knew you are being disloyal to yourselves. And as opposed to reprimanding them for this sin that they were committing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately relaxes the law. Look at this. Then look further. فَالْآنَ بَاشِرُهُنَّ وَابْتَغُوا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Now consort them and seek what Allah has written for you. Now look at this. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطِ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Then eat and drink until the white streak becomes clear from the black streak at dawn, at the crack of dawn. Why did he say this? Look into the tafasir, the Shia tafasir, the Sunni tafasir. This is what we will find in response, the incident in whose response this verse came. Because a person was digging trench with the Prophet, they were anticipating an attack from the Meccans. So they were digging a trench, and this man fell unconscious. The Prophet was saddened when he learned the reason why he was so weak. He had gone home the previous night and said to his wife, I will eat in a little while. But their fast initially was a fast in which if they were to sleep, they forfeited their meal, night meal. They could only eat and then sleep, not sleep. If they slept, then their meal had gone. Can you see that? So what happened was he sat and he fell asleep. When he awoke, he realized his meal had gone. Even though it wasn't morning still. It wasn't morning. He had slept at night. And he woke up at night. But the condition was that they should eat prior to sleeping. So he had forfeited his meal. The Prophet was saddened. As the Prophet was saddened, this verse was revealed. This part of the verse was revealed. Now eat and drink to your heart's content until you see the whiteness of the sky. And it is quite clear for you. Can you see that? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again dispenses with the harshness of the law. Now, there's quite a few points I want to make, so please bear with me. ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامِ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. Then complete the fast until night. Okay? Now here, I'll stop with the verse. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, He wants ease for you, not hardship. One. Yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if you fast, it is good for you. There are values inside it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so that you may become God mindful. On top of that, we are seeing the overall attitude of God by making ease, physical introduction of ease. Your wives are haram for you, I'm making them halal for you on the nights of Ramadan. Eating and drinking prior to sleep is halal, after sleep is haram, I'm making it halal for you. Eat and drink as much as you want. Yes? So he is practically showing that ease. We have seen that. Now, the Quran in other places also says, Yuridullah bikumul yusr wala yurid bikumul usr. Allah wants ease for you, does not want hardship for you. In another place, Allah says, Allah has made in your religion ease for you, not hardship for you. If we retain all of these, then we go into the discussion that I want to give right now. That there is a distinction that the Quran is making between what I term as form and essence. The prayer that we attend to has a direction known as the Kaaba, has ruku and has sujood. Yes? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that when you are under threat of the enemy, then discharge the prayer rukbanan aw rijalan, whilst riding the horse as you flee or whilst you walk and run. And then when you're in safety, then pray as Allah has taught you. So now when riding a horse, we are neither doing ruku, we are neither doing sujood, we are not in any posture, and we are not facing qibla. Yes? What does that show? That shows that the essence of prayer is connected with ruku and sujood, but in a given context and with facing the qibla. Otherwise, if the context changes, those gestures of ruku and sujood are no longer of any value, but the essence of prayer is valuable. Pray nonetheless on horseback as you flee or as you walk. Can you see this? The essence is retained, the form is relaxed, and other forms prevail. Now, I don't want to go into too many examples from the hadiths, but if you query afterwards, then inshallah we can. Because I want to make this a little bit short, and I do still have some time, right? So now, here is what I'm saying. That in the Middle Eastern context, the day and night were so balanced that abstention from eating and drinking and sexual consorting in that balanced region was productive for people. As we move outside of the Middle East and go to Stockholm, let us say, Sweden, the fast, or Scotland and North Scotland, the fast becomes 22 hours, 15 minutes, 23 hours. And in winter, it becomes 2 hours, 3 hours. Now, if sunrise and sunset are truly connected with the fast, then in that case, the fast loses its value upon which it is based. Look at the problem of the short fast. In a short fast, there is sunrise and sunset. Nobody has any problem. But a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hour fast does not do anything for me as a person who observes abstention for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. It is actually valueless. And if you go into a 23-hour fast, it is actually counterproductive, and it is not a right fast. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that day and night as a form is not connected with the fast. It's a non-essential connection. Fast has its own essence and understanding. Day and night are accidentally connected to the fast. Now, let's just explain that a bit further. Yes? And we talk about the remedies that the scholars have given. You see, the Quran says, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامِ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, then complete the fast until night. Me and you conventionally know there is a huge distinction between sunset and between night. When we prayed Maghrib today, even by our standard of adding 10 minutes on top of sunset, it was still very bright in the sky. Who would say that this is night? Nobody would say that this is night. It's not dark enough for us to conventionally call it night. But we do that because our imams have taught us that setting of the sun is, in other words, night for your consumption of attending and discharging the religious duties. For you, setting of the sun is considered to be night. Maghrib is night, although conventionally none of us will say that Maghrib is night. None of us. And when we prayed today, we saw how bright the sky was. For a person reading this verse for the first time, they would not dare pray at that time. Imagine if that verse had come for the first time. The Prophet was reading this verse. Nobody would pray with such a bright sky there. Yes? Even after adding 10 minutes. So here we are seeing that the night is not really followed in the Quran in any case. We have already modified the meaning of night by saying that it is sunset. 2, in the time of the Prophet, people did not have the hang-ups that we have. Allah is saying, then eat and drink until the white streak is apparent from you from the black streak of morning. Now, person is eating and saying, well, I really can't see the white streak of night here. The other one said, well, I see it, so I'm stopping it. Well, by all means. The other one is eating for another 10 minutes, another was eating for another 15, another 20 minutes. It was a human law, a very loose human law. Not to the second, this is my last cigarette puff that I'm going to smoke, and that's it. It's done, finished. Yes? So day and night were not at all connected to the fast. You can crucify me for this, and the more you do that, the better it is, because then we can at least come to an understanding here. So, the day and night limits are accidental, in my opinion. 2, fast, according to the understanding of devotional acts and the culture of ease that the Prophet created, in my opinion, is not an individual act by individuals. It has to be understood by the collective body as to what is right, what is wrong. As to how do we set up another limit is another question that we need to arrive at and we need to discuss. Now, according to the traditional scholarship, in places where there is no day or night, their responses are what? Their responses are migrate to a region where there is day and night. 1. 2, don't fast. Because there is no day and night, where will you fast? But the month has set in, so fast is obligatory. Man shahida minkum falyasum. He who witnesses it, let them fast. The moon is there. The month has set in, but there is no day, there is no night. So if there is no day, there is no night, there is no fast. So what do they do? What do you do? Well, you do qada outside that time. So that is where there is no sunrise, sunset. What in a place in which it is 23 hours? What is the traditional response? The traditional response is based on the narrations that are abundantly supplied to us based on the Quranic ethos of ease and no hardship. Qaida la haraj, or in Allah, la yurid bikumul usr. Allah does not want hardship for you. Based on that principle, what the ulama are saying is that, well, look, if it becomes very hard to fast, then don't fast. Because Allah does not want hardship upon you. Then go and fast at some other time. Or travel to Dar es Salaam. Yes, and fast there. Or travel 14 miles or 28 miles every day in your Mercs. Yes, and don't even get tired and you're relaxed and stop fasting. These are the three responses given. Yes? So now a poor person is caught up with a 23-hour fast and a rich man goes to Dar es Salaam. Fine. Now, I'm going to give you a scenario here. And this is true. A student of mine sat on a plane after Dhuhr from UK going to Canada in the peak of summer. So he starts his fast at 2:15. Yes, or 2:20, whatever the time is, I'm not sure. I fast for 22 hours, so it doesn't make any difference for me. So at 2:15 or 2:20, it's a very pious person. So about 2:15 with the imsak, the half-hour imsak that we have before the Fajr. And Allah says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may be God weary. And maybe He should have said, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَمُوتُونَ, so that you may die instead. So he starts his fast at 2:15, let's say. At 1 o'clock, he boards a plane. So it's already been 12 hours. Now the plane flies into the eye of the sun. 8-hour journey going to New York. It is still sunny there because you go back by 4 hours or 5 hours, I don't know, 6 hours. Okay, he waits at the airport, then flies to Toronto. Yeah? When he lands in Toronto, the sun is still out. He finally breaks his fast after 25 hours. Okay? Good. Another person sits on the plane on the same day, flying towards Australia. Within 4 hours, he breaks his fast. These are the absurdities that we are getting with the sunrise-sunset calculations. Yes? So what I'm trying to say here is the sunrise and sunset is not connected to it at all. Now, in the UK, people can decide to fly to Africa. Those people who can afford it. They go to Africa and they fast a 12-hour fast. The rest of us are stuck here and fast 20 hours. How long do we fast nowadays? 19 and a half? Yeah, I mean, after a certain number of hours, you lose your senses anyway, so you can't tell how many hours you fasted anymore. So what I'm trying to say here is the sunrise and sunset are not connected, but these were the traditional responses. And these traditional responses seem to be unreasonable. Okay. Now we go forward and we say that what should be therefore the remedy to this? Ayatollah Muhakkik, whose statement we will use, has used the precept of feasibility. The precept of feasibility to shorten the fast. But as you will see, there is a lot of problem with that precept, but he has done a commendable job in responding to the weakness in that precept. And he has stated that people have discretion in how much they can fast and then open their fast. Another precept to use is la haraj, as I stated, but that nullifies the fasting altogether. They don't give a standard law for the community as a collective body, but these are at individuals' discretions. Now lately we have had two very grand ayatollahs giving fatwas. Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi, who gave it 2-3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, and Sheikh Makarim Shirazi, who gave it last year. Now, before going into their fatwas, Egyptians gave fatwa in 1986 or 89 to shorten the fast to 16 hours, the Egyptians, Al-Azhar. And now recently, our Sunni brothers have taken on the whole debate again. And now they are very seriously saying that, look, it should be shortened. And at a collective level, not individual discretions at all. So that the whole community begins their fast together, the whole community breaks their fast together. Yes? So that is what is happening now. Makarim Shirazi Sahib and Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi Sahib's fatwas are these. From what I remember, and I've read, correct me if I'm wrong, they say that in places where the days are abnormal, i.e. are not conventional, in other words, over 18 hours. The only reason they would have said this is that because areas like Tabriz, within the Islamic Empire, had days stretching over 17 hours or 17 hours 20 minutes within the peak of summer. So they say that days that stretch over 18 hours, the people there are allowed to use their discretion to follow any other country with a normal sunrise sunset. By normal it means what is enjoyed within the Middle Eastern region of a properly balanced sunrise sunset, and they can follow that calculation. I think recently said Shirazi has modified his to say to make it 17.5 a standard. I'm not sure. Yeah? So he's made that modification. I think 17.5 again, he was only saying that because Tabriz used to have 17.5 hours or something like that. Now, my problem here is this, yes, with say Sheikh Makarim Shirazi's fatwa and not Sayyid Sadiq because he's modified his, is that a person may live in a region where the fast is 17 hours and 55 minutes. That person has to fast full. And then somebody else lives 50 miles to the north and the fast becomes 18 hours and 2 minutes and they can shorten it to 12 hours. It doesn't work. There has to be a standard, a proper standard that we can follow as a community. The very fact that Sayyid Sadiq and Sheikh Makarim can go away from the nightfall, hatta layl, the very fact that they can say that night is not essential component of the fast, it breaks the whole connection of fast with sunrise and sunset. Can you see that? Then the whole question arises that if sunrise and sunset are not essential components of a fast, then what is the true nature of the fast? Can you see that? And how are we supposed to then stipulate the limit of the fast? I mean, we can easily go to the Meccan or to Tus, where Imam Rada used to be, and say, well, minimum is 12 hours in winter, because you can't have 2-hour fast or 4-hour fast, so make a minimum of 12 hours. You can't fast less than 12 hours in winter, and maximum is 16 hours to 17 hours that Imam Rada fasted, and that was the max. Because if Imam Rada was around and people of Tabriz would have told him, we're fasting 17.5 hours, 18.5, he would have indeed said to them, shorten it. And I'm telling you why he would have done that. Somebody came to the fifth Imam, Salamullah alayhi, and he said, where do I do tawaf from? The fifth Imam gave a categorical instruction that between the Rukn and the Maqam. Don't do it outside the Maqam. Somebody came to the sixth Imam and he said, look, I do tawaf outside the Maqam because of the excessive numbers of Hujjaj. The Imam says, La ara ba's bihi. I see no problem in it. If this hypothetical situation were to not have arisen in the time of the sixth Imam, that new injunction would never have come. Can you see that? Then we would have been doing tawaf between Rukn and Maqam, 3 million of us, and not outside it. Can you see that? So this is what I'm saying. Had the Imam faced these situations, hypothetically, they would have done that which was most reasonable, because 23 hours of fast for a 9-year-old girl or a person working overtime is not something that is productive. It's counterproductive, and it actually kills them. A 2-hour fast and a 4-hour fast is something that has no value inside it. These ahkam are value-based. Sunrise, sunset has no connection with the fast at all. It has an arbitrary connection. Now you might ask, well, why did the Imam say this and why did the Imam say that? That was in its own context, and we'll have to examine that the Imam was trying to get the form right. For example, the Imam would say to the Sahaba, don't fold your arms in prayer because that invalidates the Salah. And at the same time, the Imam was so insistent that go and pray with the main body in the first line or second line, from 6th Imam till 11th Imam. 2, people who joined Ali ibn Abi Talib Salamullah alayhi from Muawiyah's camp, they folded their arms and prayed historically. He had no problem with them. Talha and Zubair, who were on Aisha's side, in Jamal, opened their arms and they prayed. They didn't have any problem with these things. Can you see that? It has to be read afresh and read differently. Now, I'm not going to go on to the discussion of how we should then stipulate the limit of the fast, because for me, it's a question of integration of human learning or expert conventions. Failing that, then follow the time that Imam Rada followed, which is the maximum time to which the fast ought to be. And there shouldn't be any fast after that, because the nature of the fast is null and void and finished, done and dusted. There's no need for sunset at all. Now, what is the nature of fast? Is it really abstention from eating and drinking? Is it really abstention from eating and drinking? Or is the nature of fast something else? Here comes another problem. You see, back in the 90s, I remember I went to the Khoja Mosque and I said that you can take your inhalers whilst fasting. The Khojas were up in arms. You know, they could have unsheathed and put me to death. Of course, you know, they wouldn't, because I'm their son. And also I'm the father of the whole of Birmingham community, whether Khoja or otherwise, okay? Let me just assert my own position. So then I phoned Mullah Sahib and I said, Mullah Sahib, you have written in this fatwa of Ayatollah Khoi that inhalers are not permissible. How is that possible? It's not eating or drinking. He said, you're right, I'm going to talk to Ayatollah Khoi. He spoke with Ayatollah Khoi, and Ayatollah Khoi sent back that, look, these inhalers are fine, they're not eating or drinking. Can you see this? Somebody went to the sixth Imam and he said, can I sit in public baths with all the fumes coming into my mouth? The Imam said, there's no problem, go and do it. It's not eating or drinking. Can you see that? Now, I'm going to take you to something quite rattling. You know, me and you, smoking is haram during fast, but put nicotine patch on, it's fine. Okay? Eating and drinking is haram, but have intravenous injections of vitamins, it's fine. Because it's not going down your throat, let it go in your body through some other source. Can you see that? Because it's not considered conventional as eating and drinking, as going down the throat, it's fine. Tell me something. What is the meaning of fast? We inject ourselves with vitamins, yes, to run the 100 meters and beat everybody else. It's fine. We can put nicotine patches and cover ourselves and drug ourselves up all day long. It's fine. The nature of fast is something totally different. Somebody went to the sixth Imam Salamullah alayhi, and he said, look, my daughter can't withstand thirst. Do you know what he said? He said, let her sip some water and carry on fasting. Somebody else went to the Imam and he said, don't look at me like that. Somebody else went to the Imam and he said, I can't withstand my thirst. The Imam said, okay, drink and do qada afterwards. What was the Imam saying? What the Imam was saying accurately was, and we get this from the hadith itself, that people with chronic conditions, diabetes, yes, or hay fever or something or other, these people need consumption of certain amount of medicines and food. Let them consume that minimal amount and carry on fasting, because throughout their lives they're not going to be able to fast at all by that standard of eating and drinking. Anything that goes down the throat is eating, as opposed to anything being injected inside you. Yes? So the Imam said, let her drink. So in the case of people who are chronic sufferers, they should fast. And they can drink to the extent necessary for them. But if I get very thirsty and I don't have any chronic condition at all, if I drink a sip of water, then my fast will break and I'll do qada afterwards. But for that person, it's fine. So what is the nature of fast? Again, it comes back to that form and essence. The essence of the fast is general abstention. For those who are able, they will abstain to the prescribed limit that is beneficial. For those who are unable to abstain due to their medical condition, they can eat and drink to the minimal extent that is necessary for their survival and continue with their fast. I'm going to stop there so that we can have questions and queries. But what I'm saying right now shouldn't be taken as something strange. The grand ayatollahs have given these fatwas, yes? Like Makarim Shirazi, Sadiq Shirazi, I hear Ayatollah Zanjani has given the fatwa of drinking water, but I don't personally subscribe to that, only in the case of chronic illnesses, nothing else. Sorry.
Salawat. Before I open the floor for questions, I'm going to read out a couple of statements from Ayatollah Nobahar and Ayatollah Dr. Sayyid Mustafa Muhakkik Damad, because they're not able to make it, but they requested that I read their views on this topic out. So starting with Ayatollah Muhakkik Damad, he presented this view at the Al-Mahdi Institute conference on fiqh issues on fasting last year. And I'm going to read the abstract out right now. In the name of Allah, the juristic principle of feasibility, al-qadat al-maysur, and its applicability to fasting. According to various verses of the Quran and authentic traditions transmitted from reliable religious authorities, many religious obligations are reduced when the obligated believers encounter unbearable hardships, or in order to forestall such unbearable cases. For example, in long journeys, the prayer is reduced due to the fact that travelers might face hard and untoward circumstances. In a similar manner, when there is a shortage of water, wudu is changed to tayammum. The analysis of such cases has established a legal principle in 12 Shi'ism called the principle of feasibility, al-qadat al-maysur. According to this juristic principle, should a believer encounter any unbearable difficulty in performing any religious obligation, he's permitted to perform it only to the extent possible for him, and the remainder is abolished. For example, if a believer is unable to pray in a standing position, he can pray in sitting position. However, Muslim jurisprudence have concluded that the principle of feasibility is not universally applicable to all religious duties. It's commonly believed that there are two kinds of religious obligations, those that can be divided and those that cannot. As-salah, canonical prayer, is considered to belong to the first category, and fasting to the second. Muslim jurisprudence consider the principle of feasibility only applicable to the first category and not to the second, due to the uniqueness and non-divisibility of the latter in unbearable circumstances. Should such circumstances arise in a non-divisible obligation, the duty itself might be abolished from the obligated believers altogether, rather than being reduced to the extent that is feasible. Accordingly, Muslim jurisprudence have issued the verdict that a person cannot fast only the part of the day which he can bear, breaking the fast the rest of the day. Fasting is abolished altogether for such a person, and he is required to do the compensatory qada act as provided by the religious law. In Ayatollah Muhakkik Damad's paper, he sought to establish that the categorization of religious obligations into divisible and non-divisible is dubious and disputable, as a means of establishing the universal validity of the principle of feasibility. Beyond this, should the categorization of divisible and non-divisible obligations be maintained, it was shown that according to certain reliable traditions, fasting can be construed as a divisible act, and hence is not different from prayer in this regard. Accordingly, in line with the principle of feasibility, he argued that an obligated believer is only required to fast the extent of the day that he can bear. Now we've got a separate opinion by Ayatollah Nobahar on the length of the day of the fast. First, in issues like this, we have to consider the philosophy of worship. When talking about the philosophy of fasting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, so that you may get to piety. So Allah doesn't want to kill us. Rather, He wants us to help ourselves reach piety, awareness, self-control, the sense of gratitude and appreciation, and spirituality, which are mentioned as the objectives of fasting in different Islamic texts. In some, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say so that you may be killed, but He says so that you may attain God consciousness. Secondly, according to another Quranic rule, there's no hardship in religion. There is, of course, difference between simple difficulty and hardship. We all know that in Islam there's some hard but endurable duties, like fasting. But haraj is more than just difficulty. The la haraj, or no hardship principle, is hakim. It's dominant upon all other verdicts and rules, except of those we realize that the Holy Legislator insists to be preserved, followed upon, and taken care of categorically, even in case of haraj and hardship. One, for example, is not allowed to kill someone under the excuse of haraj, or necessity or duty. Certainly fast and its details are under the domination of the no hardship rule. It's a mistake to settle Islamic laws as combined with Haraj or very close to Haraj and then remove it by the no hardship rule. The normal laws and regulations must be far from Haraj and hardship. In other words, this rule must work as a guideline for jurists when inferring laws and regulations. In the case of fasting in areas with 20 hours, when it is normally unendurable, we make sure that there is no mandatory verdict for such a fast. Thirdly, the subjects and belongings, al-mawdu'at wal-muta'allaqat, of religious verdicts and laws must be interpreted based on the common sense and reasonableness. The most normal and reasonable concept of day for fasting, which has received the acknowledgement and ratification of Allah, of the Holy Legislator, is the length of the day of Saudi Arabia, and in particular Makkah and Medina, where this worship was established by the Holy Legislator and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our infallible imams, peace be upon them all. So all areas with abnormal lengths of day can follow these cities as their standard and criteria, be their day unreasonably short or long. If someone is able to abstain from overeating or overdrinking and other things which invalidate the fast during the whole time, as a precaution, that will be recommended. So those are the opinions of Ayatollah Nobahar and Ayatollah Muhammad Damad. We've heard Sheikh Arif, but it would be great to hear from the audience now. And I'd like to open the floor up for questions. I'd like to remind everyone there is a Twitter poll, so please do use it if you'd like to. But let's start with the floor. I think there's a mic which is going around. The mic. Oh, Muhammad here. Please raise your hand high so I can see when you would like to raise a question. Okay. Go, Muhammad. Hassan, go.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a couple of things regarding the theory that Sheikh Arif mentioned. The first was the difference between what you were saying in terms of disconnecting the fast from dawn and sunset, as opposed to what Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi and Ayatollah Nasir Makarim would be, that they don't separate the fast from the dawn. And I suspect that's because it's described in terms of the natural phenomena in the Quran. So they say both times that the fast should start at Fajr, but then they perhaps take a more relaxed view on Layl because it's not described in terms of the natural phenomena. So in terms of your disconnection, I think this is where I have a query about this, is that even if you take this theory of form and essence, and with the analogy you gave of Salah, the relationship between Salah and Ruku and Sajda is strong enough for Allah to say, even if you are on horseback and praying, when you do find time, then you should pray your Salah with the normal form. So it's quite a strong relationship. It's not something that can be modified easily. So I'm wondering how, is there enough evidence to disconnect it so easily and be able to adjust it, in different regions? Or how do we weaken that relationship so much?
No, the very fact that Sayyid Sadiq and Sayyid Sheikh Makarim can go away, can depart from the layl, shows that the essential connection of dawn and dusk is broken from the fast, from the form of the fast. And that's done. For me, the whole of this law is something else altogether. It's a law of abstention. That's the essence. The form that it acquired was because of the convenience of that form in the context in which the law came. Yes? Now there are ample evidences. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the salah is connected with qiyam, with ruku, with sujood, essentially in our minds. Allah and facing of the Kaaba. If Allah can dispense with all four in one shot, then why is it so arduous not to understand the whole meaning of form and essence as distinct meanings? That that essence acquires different forms in different contexts. So here what we're saying is, our argument is two or threefold. I have not talked about the existential principles because I didn't think it was befitting for this gathering. It would just be arduous and cumbersome. But the fact that it is a value-based law, yes, then in that case we can see that the value is retained through abstention to a particular time, which is hard but bearably hard. As Nobahar says, There are certain laws that are postulated with hardship in mind, but bearable hardship. 2, the Quran itself is dispensing with the hardship of fast. You can consort your wives, you can eat and drink to your heart's content, so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is that dawn and dusk are in no way essential components of the fast. What is an more essential component of the fast is abstention from consumables. Can you see that? But even that is not an absolute essence of fast. An absolute essence of fast is general abstention, because Imam Sadiq permitted that girl who had a problem to drink and still fast. Can you see that? So just as dawn and dusk can be dispensed with, even the more essential facet of abstention can be dispensed with in regards to different contexts. Now, to top it all off, eating and drinking within the traditional mindset is something that surpasses the throat. So you can have as many injections as you want of vitamins, nicotine patches, none of these things will break your fast. And to me, that sounds a little bit absurd. Yeah.
Any other questions? Muhammad Irfan? Oh.
When it comes to making up of fasts, and particularly for women due to nursing or pregnancy, and they haven't been able to, for a number of years, get round to making them up for whatever reasons, how obligatory is it still performing those qada, or can there be any other way around it?
There are two views on this. One is, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةُ طَعَامٍ مِسْكِينٍ. For people who find it difficult, let them expiate by feeding a poor person. Yes? Now, if we feel that that was the former fast, and now it's replaced by the other verses that come, then in that case, the whole thing is turned slightly. That they pray fidya because they're not fasting. And 2, because the subject of fasting has already ripened and matured, which is what? وَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمْ فَلْيَصُمْ. As soon as the month sets in, the whole obligation of fast sets in. If the obligation has set in, then in that case, lapse performance of it is also pending. Yes? But we derive that from a variety of different hadiths, not from the injunction itself, not from the law itself. So it would seem, according to the fatwa of our ulama, on the deliberations on not usul fiqh, because usul fiqh in that the command cannot supply that, but from hadiths outside usul fiqh and the primary evidences, it would seem that yes, they have to pay back the qada at some point or another. Because the Quran says, فَعَدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. Sorry, it also says it, yes?
Just a comment more than a question. This disconnect from the dawn and sunset seems to be the main problem for people to get around, because the argument used is that the Quran clearly says fast till the night. But just to stress on the point that you made regarding the conventional night, and you said that at this time, Maghrib, the sunset, it's still light, and we won't call that night. But if you also look at the winter months when sunset is at 4:30, 5 o'clock, same argument there, but it highlights it even more that we won't say it's nighttime at 4:30 or at 5 o'clock. And the Quran also clearly states regarding the night being a time of rest for you. So
I thank you for pointing that out. Day and night are determined as much by the functions of day and night. So you're right. When in other countries the night sets in at 2 o'clock, we will not say it's night, we will say, well, it's dark, but the function of night hasn't set in. So the Quranic verse is also open to interpretation. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I forgot to mention that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Arif. My question is a bit to do with history, but it links into this. Do we not believe in Islam that the Prophet Muhammad was the last prophet who has completed what Allah has been trying to send through the prophets before him? And I do understand that's true, that people were keeping fast before the Prophet had established in the Middle East. But when the Prophet had made the changes at the end, that was to be kept as the complete and the final part of how fast should be kept.
Is that finished?
Yes.
Of course, we believe the Prophet was the final Prophet, and of course, we believe that Islam was completed. What we don't understand is what that Islam means, and hence the debate. Can you see that? When we say that the Prophet completed Islam, that's fine. We agree with that, yes? But what did he mean by the Islam that he completed? That is the point of dispute. Now, if what you say is accurate in the way that you have understood it, then the Imam Sadiq should have known better, right?
Yes.
So why did Imam Sadiq allow that girl to sip water and still fast? 2, Imam Bakir should have known better, yes? Then why did Imam Bakir dispense with the half of khums and introduce khums and levied it on other items? Yes? It's all a question of the process of interpretation. Of course, everybody believes Islam is complete. Imam Sadiq believed it more than me and you. Yes? But he still dispensed with that law. ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامِ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ. Obviously, Imam Sadiq understood it differently. Yes? There's no dispute that Islam is complete. What is disputable is what does it mean? Can you see that? I mean, Imam Khomeini also, he stated, I think Dr. Ahmadpur was explaining, that Imam Khomeini also said, you know, if your judgment goes against the literal word of the Quran, I don't know what he was trying to say, but cutting off the hands, because Iran no longer cuts off fingers. At one point they used to, but they no longer cut off fingers. Now that is going against the Quran, right? The cutting off the hands of the thief. But there you go, it's a process of trying to understand what that injunction really means. Yes? That's the whole process. The biggest point that the Imami are making about the Khilaf of Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi was not that he got the first place or the fourth place or whatever. Their biggest problem is, our biggest problem as a Muslim community is, that after the going of the Prophet, Ali ibn Abi Talib was the yardstick and the absolute tool that would have taught us how to understand the Quran that the Prophet had delivered to us. What was the most accurate understanding of it? And that was the lamentable part of it, that he wasn't allowed to do that fully. Can you see that? But his sons obviously have left glimpses for us to try and understand what he means, or what Imam Ali's methods would have been. My brother, have you understood that?
I have. Just want to add something to it.
Yes.
The debate that we're doing here is the argument about the fact that the hours, the time span that we are fasting is physically causing harm to the person who is fasting. If that is the case, what about people who live in the Middle East? They are fasting in temperatures of 50 plus degrees, even though their fasts are only about 13, 14 or 16 hours. They're probably going through the same hardship that we are here, just because we're getting hardship in time span, they're getting hardship in temperature. So that make changes to their fast as well.
They should not fast. To be quite honest with you, you see this? The people in Dubai, right? The temperatures hit over 50. The government doesn't declare it. These poor people faint there and they are dragged out on stretchers. Yes? Of course, fasting is not made for people to endure in such circumstances so unbearably, because it's not productive, it's counterproductive, and it kills people. Allah says, Inna Allah yurid likumul yusr wala yurid lakumul usr. Allah wants ease for you. How is a poor worker in Dubai or Kuwait in that burning heat expected to work from morning into the afternoon to the evening? It's not right, it's wrong, it's absolutely wrong. And that's why the Prophet created a culture of ease during fast. Can you see how the Prophet arranged it? Sleep, do tasbih, your sleeping is ibadah, relax. If you go in the Middle East, it's a culture of ease. If you go into Dubai, it's a culture of slavery. Can you see that? But now, yes, it is unfortunate that some people with harsh lifestyles have to endure that, and by all rights, their God will not make them account for not being able to fast under 50 degrees of heat when they have to go and till the land and work there. Yes? They're not. But there's one thing also that you should know, that people's bodies adapt and get accustomed. Like, for example, the girls were maturing at the age of 9 in the time of the Prophet. So they could get married and give babies. Fine. At the time of Imam Sadiq, the girls were maturing at the age of, menstruating at the age of 13. Imam Sadiq said this clearly. So also this human body has its own dynamism. We adapt to lifestyles, to cultures, to environment, to food, so on and so forth. So it's not a very simple, straightforward. We can't make comparisons. But for a fact that a 20-hour fast is not a fast, is something that stares us in the face.
But would we not adapt to the time span as well if everything has been adapted? I
don't think a 9-year-old girl, the poor thing, can adapt to a 20-hour fast, my dear brother, nor a person who's working overtime. When we came here 30 years ago, 40 years ago, for those of you who were with me here, we used to fast 20 hours, yes? Do our exams, work in petrol stations, earning. We were young, and we could do it, but we were looking at the state of the older generation, of the younger ones, and we could see. Then I went to a community in the north, above Manchester, where the fasts were about 21 hours, because we used to be full of ihtiyats, and I used to pray very slow namaz. And when we used to do iftari, the poor people used to eat like as if they hadn't seen food, and my heart would bleed for them and I would cry. So once I was doing Quran Khani and nobody showed up, so I said, I better go to the kitchen and get these guys. When I stepped into the kitchen, they were all eating. So I said, look, I don't mind you eating, but why do you eat so much at iftari as well? The thing is that they were all, after we would start our fast at 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what? By 6 o'clock, they would go and travel to Manchester and back. Do a half hour's ride, open their fast and come back. You know, it is unbearable for people who are working. It is not bearable. 30 fasts of 19, 20 hours is not a joke. Yes? People like me can bear it. I have nothing else to do but sit in my office. I quite enjoy it because it gives me relaxation from food. Think more. And give you more doji fatwas.
Any other questions?
Strike that off.
There was a question which has been sent to me. Would you be able to explain the notion of what happens when you have diabetes, especially if someone is 65-year-old also and suffering?
You see, look, if a person has a chronic condition, then they should consume their drinks to the extent required for their health and continue to fast. In that way, they will not miss out on the spiritual benefits of fast. Yes, and if they want to be more cautious, then also give fidya as well for every day, to expiate for every day. Because that is directly in line with what Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayh told us.
Any questions from the audience? Yep, sister in the middle.
Assalamu alaikum. Sheikh, I think some people are coming to terms with the fact that the fast can be shortened or should be shortened. And in my mind, I think the main reasoning being that actually the fast weren't supposed to be this long. So if we accept that, okay, the fast can be shortened, people who even accept that are still choosing to fast a longer fast because perhaps they see that as preferable to God in some way. And I just want to clarify, is it preferable to fast that longer fast? Because if it isn't, then those extra hours are just redundant.
For me, the fast finishes. And if you want to do extra, then that's fine. I mean, whatever you do for Allah, it's between you and your God. But whatever a person does with the presumption it's not going to be accepted, then that is due to insecurity. Yes? So there's a big thing. For me, the ideal thing is not what Ayatollah Muhakkik has said, that a person uses individual discretion to shorten the fast. For me, the ideal thing is a collective stipulation of a time limit which is beneficial, like 16 hours, 17 hours, whatever it may be.
Now, I asked that question because I think there's a perception that actually there's some greater level of piety in being able to fast a longer fast, and there's this stigma that's associated with actually shortening the fast, because it's as if people are thinking, well, this person's shortening the fast, either they're less able or they're less pious. And if there isn't any sort of, you're not going to, it's not preferable to God necessarily that you fast a longer fast. If the fast has finished, then that differential isn't there between either in ability or piety.
No, in my opinion, there is no such thing. A fast is a prescribed act that the collective body is supposed to uphold and discharge. There is no hang-up about piety in there. There is nothing to do with preference of God or anything. Whatever I want to do in my own self, with my God, is my personal piety. Maybe instead of eating a whole plate full, I can eat 3 morsels and call it a day. And that my God will appreciate far more, rather than having this fear that God might reprimand me or God might give me extra brownies if I don't think that's the case at all. I at least don't have any problem with that. It should be a collective decision, and everybody ends their fast after a prescribed number of hours, and that's the end of it. There's no more fast after that.
Okay, I'm going to use my prerogative as a chair to ask a quick question. You just mentioned right now that it's very important for it to be a collective decision, a collective idea, and you're not a fan of Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi's view of a personal understanding of when difficulty comes in. What would be the justification from a textual, legal, or form perspective for the communality of fasting? Is there something which you can discern from texts or from other sources?
You see, this is a very, very important question. We understand from the ethos of obligation when they are collective that they are addressed and directed to the collective body in the capacity of a community. Like Hajj, like Salah, Siyam as well. Kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. And the way the Prophet created the culture of fast shows it's something not only for the individual but for the collective body with the whole accompanying culture of it.
But prayers, for example, you are encouraged to pray together, but there is no obligation to pray together, and therefore there's no collective requirement to pray together. With fasting, why could that same principle not apply?
You see, the thing is that if you say that everybody uses their own discretion, life becomes unnecessarily difficult. One opens at 12, one at 13, one at 14, one at 15, one at 16, one at 20, one at 21, one at 22. Correct. There is no consistency left, and there's not that communal cohesion, communal culture, communal piety is not left anymore.
So there is a separate obligation for communal cohesion?
I wouldn't say an obligation, but that is a spiritual requirement. And Quran talks of Aqimus Salah again and again, and Hajj together, the Eid doing together, Jum'ah together. There's a collective spirituality there as well.
So what level does that reach? Close to obligation? Or
No, this is known as the area of discretion or discretionary area in my theory. It's a discretionary area. It's not obligatory until the whole community deems it as such and says, look, it's very, very important that we have standards by which we abide, and we need to standardize. And as a human community, you know for a fact that we operate at a collective level on standards, and we standardize things.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience? Yep, brother in the middle.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is more to do with traveling. You mentioned in... Can you hear me? Okay. You mentioned in a couple of examples regards to flights, people flying to Australia, people flying to Canada. So in today's world, distances have shortened because of...
Yes, it's fine. Carry on.
Yeah. So distance have shortened, and it's more easy to commute without feeling the difficulty in commuting. So what's your opinion on that? Is there some traditions from the imams that reflect on that change? For example, I'll be traveling to London on Tuesday, and it's an hour-and-a-half journey, and it's not really making it difficult for me to fast, but I still have to forfeit my fast for the day. What is your opinion on that in that regard?
If we look at, and if we review the literature, Quran very simply says, right, that if you go on warfare and you go forth on warfare, then there's no harm in you in shortening your prayer. And then there's a judicial principle that states, wherever the prayers break, the fast breaks. Yes? So now we are adding two things together and we're coming out with a law. Now, when we talk about the law of shortening of the prayer, which is then effective for fast, it's to consider it with travel. The Imams, Salamullah alayhim ajma'in, they used to insist upon a day's travel. Or they used to say, barid yawm aw baridain, the postal sort of journey of a day, or two postal journeys, yes?
It was only later on when the Imams were pressed for a particular specific distance that they talked about farsakh and farasikh. Can you see that? But the initial tone of the Imam was always day's travel. If you're engaged in day's travel, then Allah is giving you sadaqah. And of course, there's there was a whole of this thing that the Prophet traveled and he said, bring water, I'm going to open my fast. And the rest did not open it. And the Prophet said, these people are sinning. Allah is giving sadaqah. Take Allah's sadaqah by opening your fast and by shortening your prayer. But the Imams insisted that that's a day's travel. So today's travel, in which we go for farsakh in 20 minutes, does not constitute a day's travel. The essence was day's travel, not the 8 farsakh. The 8 farsakh was a stipulation for day's travel back in the day, not now. 2, the Imams insisted that if you are traveling in relation to your work, then you don't shorten your prayers and hence you don't break your fast. So if you're going to Dublin for the sake of work, then you don't shorten, you don't forfeit your fast.
Even though that's not a regular travel.
No, even if it's not regular. The Imam is categoric. If you go for, it's just that the ulama have said, when do you qualify as somebody who travels for work? What I'm saying is the Imam has said it. If it is work related, finish. Why should we then need to introduce convention into it? And say, well, convention says if you've done 3 times, 4 times in a week, or 4 times in a month, then you become somebody conventionally knows as somebody who is traveling. So either your work is travel, or your work entails travel. So you're a taxi driver, or you're somebody who's a consultant who flies. No matter, even if you go one day, that's according to the hadith, yes?
Questions from the brother on the right hand side?
Assalamu alaikum. You mentioned this whole concept of redefining what night is, and at one point you said something about functionality being a basis of defining night. I work nights, so at that basis, would that be considered that I actually have to fast during my nights as opposed to during the day? Because otherwise, basically my fast will be about 6-7 hours. I'll fast during the end of my shift and then go to sleep during the day and then wake up and it's time for iftar. So,
had it not been for the communal need to have standards whereby all can abide by in uniformity, I would have certainly been inclined to say something. But because of the communal restrictions, I will say, start working day shifts. During Ramadan at least.
Just a question from one of the audience members. Are you allowed to use an inhaler during fasting?
Of course. No problem. It's not eating, it's not drinking, it's nothing. You can use inhaler.
So similarly, are you allowed to smoke when fasting?
You see, Ayatollah, what's his name?
Khouy.
No, Ayatollah Ridwanullah alayhi, Sayyid Fadlullah said, smoking is a bad habit, it's haram and whatnot, but it doesn't break your fast because it's not eating and drinking. Yeah? Now, from my teacher Ayatollah Amini, he said that many ulama used to smoke during fasting. Many ulama used to smoke. Then one great mind, he said, well, smoking is like thick dust. And we have a hadith that if somebody swallows thick dust, their fast is broken. So smoking, he said, as a result of that, our Ayatollahs had to go in hiding and smoke after that. Because nobody believed that smoking was like thick dust. Yes? It's not like thick dust. Smoking is just air.
Ayatollah Khouy said the exact same thing. He says smoking is not like thick dust, but he says for ihtiyat reasons.
You know why he said for ihtiyat? Because there was so much social pressure there. Yes? So I won't mention the names that Ayatollah Amini said we used to go behind doors and smoke, but what I'm saying is, why do you want to smoke at all? It's such a harmful habit. Don't smoke.
Any questions from the audience? Sister in the middle.
Can you clarify the moment from which you're supposed to start abstaining? Is it at the sight of dawn as in sunlight, or is it as soon as Fajr Azan is sounded? Because there's discrepancies at the time of Fajr Azan.
No, get sunlight out of your mind. Oh, I see. At the crack of dawn. According to the Quran, there is no imsak or anything, yes? As soon as you can verify it's there. According to the early laws, they did not have this obsession of the second, Greenwich Mean Time, yes? They had no obsession of that. It was a very loose law. 5 minutes here and there, 10 minutes here and there were perfectly fine, yes? So when you ascertain, it's Fajr, stop eating and stop drinking. It doesn't mean that you start choking on the sip that is going down now to try to take it out again. Just drink it, it's fine, it doesn't matter. Yeah, and just carry on with your fast. It was a very loose human law. I always say that the fiqh that the Prophet brought and the Imams were explaining was human fiqh, and it had human looseness in there. Yes? And that looseness has gone.
Any other questions from the audience? Please raise your hands quite high if you can't see any. Okay, question for you. Another question for you then. When it comes to having a conventional day of fasting, how would prayers fit into that? So would Maghrib still be at sunset, or would Maghrib also be when you break your fast?
No, the sunrise and sunset are, from reading the Quran, inextricably connected to human psychology and spirituality. So when Allah is insistent upon glorifying Him at sunrise, sunset, there is a property there because we are cosmically connected. We are a part of the cosmos.
So you could pray all 5 prayers within 3 hours' time?
No. So here, so long as there is sunrise and sunset, yes, pray in those blessed times, in sunrise and sunset. Now, if you go to the northern regions, and I've been there, and I've met with poor people who live there, they sometimes have a window of 1.5 hours to pray Maghrib, Isha, Subh. And that's it. The whole thing is lost. So what we normally say is that you can space your prayers out, but in that span of sunset and sunrise, make sure you do attend to some prayer, either Isha or either Subh, because that's the window you have. So pray Isha on one end and pray Subh on the other end, but pray Maghrib before. That becomes an impossible task then. Our Sunni brothers have come out with a law for regions without sunrise sunset. Because see, with sunrise sunset it becomes difficult. Without sunrise sunset it becomes much easier. Because there's no sunrise, there's no sunset, then you can then space it equally in the day to give a normal sense of day as you will function. Somebody said functionality of the day, and you will function normally. So there, we're talking about the function of the day and night. But where we do have this sunrise, sunset, even if it is half an hour, it complicates the issue to no extent, because these are terms that are mentioned within the Quran. But so I do agree with you that if it's a very short window, then we can take it out, but still maintain devotion in that little time that we're given.
Thank you very much. I think what we'll do is we're very fortunate to have Sayyid Muhammad Naqvi here, and inshallah we will have some more questions afterwards, but I'd like to invite you to give a few minutes speech or introduction on the topic of fasting, if you would like, or on any other topic that you feel is appropriate.
I don't know what you've been discussing so far, so if you can carry on, I will just take part in the discussion.
Do you talk about the spirituality of fasting?
No, I could, but I was just here to Q&A session.
Q&A, inshallah. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? No questions from the audience? Yes, brother in the middle.
I just want to ask one more question, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your conversation there.
Sure.
Does it not mention in the Quran that the fast should start with dawn and end at, should be from morning till night? If it does mention that, then are we not changing the laws which have been revealed to us? Second part of that question would be, if there is not that I'm saying, but if there is a conflict between what the Ahlul Bayt have done and the Quran, where do we go on the basis of where the religion is? So if you could elaborate on that, please.
Right. Now, okay, let me take you back a step. The verse says what? Kulu washarabu, eat and drink. Hatta yatabayyana lakum al-khayt al-abyad min al-khayt al-aswad. Yes? So the Quran says, eat and drink until the streak of whiteness is clear for you from the streak of blackness. Thumma atimmu siyam ila al-layl. Then complete the fast till night. That's what it says, right? So fast means from dawn till dusk without any eating or drinking, yes? Are you seeing that? Imam Sadiq allowed drinking of water. Yes? So if he can allow drinking of water for people who had that illness, then it shows that the essence of fast is not connected with abstention from eating or drinking. What I'm saying is, in a similar way, the essence of fast is not connected to sunrise and sunset. The reason for that is that there is essence and there is form. The Quran is stipulating a form in a given context of Arabia, Middle East. Yes? That form is carrying that essence within the Middle Eastern context. Okay? Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi saw a different form befitting to that girl to retain the real essence of fast. Yes? That's the first thing. If there's a conflict between the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, what do we do? What does conflict mean? Conflict means they are at loggerheads with each other. Yes? That they are defying each other. And that's what the Prophet said. Whatever I have said, if it conflicts with the Quran, then throw it away. Yes? But what if what the Ahlul Bayt is saying is an explication of the Quran and specification of the generality of the Quran, then that conflict is not seen as or determined or termed as a conflict that is in violation of the injunction of the Quran. Is that okay? For example, Imam Baqir, remember I said he dispensed with the whole 1 share of khums. That is conflicting with the Quran. Yes? But according to Imam Baqir, it was the need of the time and he was in accordance with the essence of the verse. Have you got that? Sure, sure.
If the Quran, well, I believe that the Quran is universal. It does not go to any one country or one area into another. If the Quran is referring to things in the context of the Middle East only, wouldn't that make it not strong enough as an evidence to have a base of a religion? Because I could just stand up in the Europe and say, no, this is just to do in context with Arabia. My situation is different, so I will change it according to what I think is right.
Okay.
So everybody could just stand up from different ends of the world and start changing it though.
Sure. You see, the Quran was revealed 1,400 years ago, yes? Do you agree? Yes. Okay. The people 1,400 years ago lived in Arabia to whom the Quran came, yes? The Quran does not talk about apples, yes? Okay? The Quran talks about camels, yes? It talks about dates. It talks about grapes. Why does Quran only use those fruits and not use any other fruit if it was such a complete book? For example, there is possibility of certain regions of the world not having dates or grapes. So Quran is not for all times and all eras. Quran talks about means of conveyance as camels, yes? In today's day and age, we don't move by camel at all, okay? Quran talks about the daytime from the crack of dawn till dusk. So the people in the northern region living at that time in the northern region, if they wanted to embrace Islam through mobile communication, the Quran would not have been universal and for them, yes? So you have to understand from that the Quran has to give its endless meanings in words that were meaningful to the people who are receiving it for the first time. And those words restrict the Quran, but not restrict the apparentness of the Quran, but not the meaning of the Quran. And that is what our Imams have taught us all along, yes? That there is an apparent meaning, within it is a deeper meaning, within it is a deeper meaning, and that is why the Quran is renewing itself at every era, the hadith of Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayh. And therefore what we do is we look at the essence of the Quran through the words of the Quran. Wherever the word is applicable, we apply it. If not, then we go towards the essence of the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about ships sailing and camels, we know what He's trying to say. The camel in question is not really a central point of it, yes? For example, are you understanding that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
Sorry, can I have one more? Sorry. If the essence of fasting is to abstain from the worldly things, so the basic human instinct being sexual and food. So if it's to abstain from that, if somebody to say has reached to a level where he has no physical link or habit or anything and he can abstain from anything, absolutely anything, would that mean that they would be allowed not to fast because of what the practice is there for?
Obviously by priority they'll be fasting all their lives, right? If what you're saying is true, if a person does not have any need towards sexual liaisons and doesn't eat and drink, then they're fasting for all their lives, right? Why should they be allowed not to fast? Voluntarily they're fasting throughout their lives then. I don't understand what you're trying to say, my dear brother.
Sorry, my question was, if somebody has reached a level where they can abstain from absolutely anything, without any difficulty, would that not mean that they shouldn't fast? Because isn't that the practice that we get into by fasting, that to abstain from the worldly pleasures to get ourselves closer to Allah?
You see, the Prophet and the Imams insisted that no matter how far you go in your personal piety, and all the Sufi masters insist upon this, yes? That no matter how far you go in your spirituality, there is a community aspect to your existence. In that community aspect, there are standards and there's uniformity. You have to uphold them. It's a need of human life. For example, if somebody says, well, I can sip alcohol and nothing happens to me, it doesn't mean they can sip it, because law works in uniformity. If somebody says, I can drive my car at 120 miles per hour down Warwick Road and nothing happens to me, well, no, you'll get penalized and fined for it. The law has to work for everybody in uniformity. Does that make sense?
There's a question in the front here. Oh, sorry, there's a question in the back there. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Don't think you can see me, but I have a question about fasting being, or supposed to, is fasting supposed to be easy? And this whole concept of how rules and laws within, Ramadan are meant to make it easy, as you mentioned at the beginning. If we begin with that premise, then what about the whole concept of abstinence being difficult and striving and struggling? Because the whole reason why we have Eid, like some would argue, is that we've gone through this process of a struggle and abstaining from things that we normally would have. So where is the struggle in terms of striving for something and striving for closeness? And are we cutting ourselves too much slack?
See, because your tone wasn't very clear, I'll answer it because I heard it. In the whole law system, there are certain obligations that are meant to be very difficult, like self-defense, through which you can end up losing your homes, your limbs, your life. There is no ease in there, yes? Like Hajj, at the very outset, it's meant to be difficult, like fasting. Fasting is meant to be difficult. It's meant to be hard. And that's why a 2-hour fast and 4-hour fast does not make sense. Can you see that? That has been the argument, that a 2 and a 4-hour fast doesn't make sense because there's no hardship in there. However, The Quran says, in the verse of fasting, Allah wants ease for you, He does not want hardship for you. Yes? And Allah says, I have made your religion a religion of ease for you. What that means is that the fast has natural hardship, but does not have unbearable hardship. Does that make sense to you? So it is hard, but not unbearably hard. Bearably hard, yeah? Bearable difficulty.
Sheikh, just trying to understand your opinion and view on this. Because we're discussing this issue in the summer months, there seems to be an overlap or a confusion between two issues, that of haraj and urf, difficulty and convention. And then we have the third factor which you've introduced of the fasting being a communal act. Now, for example, somebody like myself who haraj is not an issue in terms of difficulty, but the convention side of it does make sense that it should be a conventional day. But at the moment, it's fine to complete the fast with the community, no issues there. But when it comes to the winter and not being comfortable breaking the fast at 4:30 and needing it to be at maybe 7:30, then the communal issue makes it a bit more difficult. What would be your opinion and view on that?
I really do feel that as we are individuals, we are social. We have two types of identities. The community has to be responsible enough to take a decision. Now, their scholars can take their decision for them. The learned people, the integrated intellect, yes? The collective integrated intellect can take the decision. But I would firmly say that there has to be standard and uniformity. You stated earlier the functionality of night. If you go to regions where it's dark at 1 o'clock, yes, you will say it's not night, it's 1 o'clock and it's dark. Yes? So the community should not open their fast at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, start at 8 o'clock and break at 1 o'clock, right? And that's it happens in the world, 4 or 5 hour fast. So the community, in one way or another, the collective intellect has to take decisions either through the collective intellect, expert opinions and expert conventions, or the scholars, or somebody has to take a decision for the community as a community. It's a collective thing. You can't leave it so loose. Then of course you don't feel comfortable. Everybody's opening their fast, now we're going to fast for another 2 hours. It doesn't make sense. Yes? And I'm just saying, look, there's a lot of gray area, and we are on the evolutionary trend, so we are going to face this struggle. We are going to face this to and fro and mistakes, but this is all part and parcel of human existence, supposed to be in this way.
Yes, but there's two things here. The haraj will take precedence anyway, so that's out of the window. But when it comes to the difference between convention and communal, before this collective decision is made, which one would take priority?
No, I would definitely increase the hours of fasting in winter, for sure. It doesn't make sense. 8-hour fast, 6-hour fast, 4-hour fast, there is no difficulty in there. There is absolutely no difficulty in there. Our imams used to be in Najaf, in Tus, where the weather used to be as cold as here. Yes? But the only thing is they had reasonable number of hours.
Since you have just come in and have been discussing about all this description for you, do you mostly agree with what Quran says?
Sorry.
I did not listen to the whole discussion. So, but I do acknowledge the evolutionary process of how we are studying and how we are moving. I do agree that we need to understand the Quran in the context and the essential message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to give, rather than the superficial message that is out there. So it is an academic institute and discussions are taking place here. We have views of the Maraji. You have probably heard, I don't know if they have been mentioned here or not, but you have the views of the Maraji who have given their views in relation to this. So there is an evolutionary process that is taking place, and that over a period of time we will reach some sort of a conclusion to arrive somewhere that will be comfortable for the community, inshallah.
There's a question in the back in the middle.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid. My question is, as a follower of Ayatollah Sistani, we have to follow our fast from dawn to dusk. So where do we stand in terms of this debate?
Well, if you have already concluded just now that you are his follower, then you have to follow him.
So we have no way out of it, basically.
Well, if you are his follower and you have agreed to be his follower, then you have no option but to follow him.
Well, yeah. Changes following somebody else.
Unless he decides that he does not consider him to be the alam. It is on the basis of who he has
doesn't
considered.
even know what alam means.
Yeah, so that's what. So that's exactly. If he does not know what it means and how he has done it, then it is entirely up to him. So if he is basing it on his jahalat, on his ignorance, then he must follow his ignorance in this case as well.
And there's a sister here.
Sorry, before I just give it to you, can you define unbearable for me? Because I seem to be getting confused on bearable and unbearable of where we lie, because that's where the grey area is.
Can we just get a few more questions from the sisters, and then we'll come back to that, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. This is just a query to both the scholars. I just want to understand that, having had such a beautiful discussion here in an academic institute, I just want to understand that, do we have such sort of discussions and dialogues and debates happening right now at present in Qom and in Najaf, like the Maraj is discussing the evolutionary, the esoteric meaning of such verses of the Holy Quran with regards to fasting and salah, hajj, etc.? I mean, is it just happening here, or do we have these sort of discussions going on globally at the moment? Please, I would really appreciate that. Yeah.
Surely, I mean, Najaf is a learning institute. Qom is a learning institute. Some areas of Pakistan, Lebanon. Surely these discussions are taking place. This is not. We are here in the United Kingdom, for example. We have Al-Mahdi Institute where these discussions are taking place. But I'm sure that there is a global understanding that some sort of discussions are definitely taking place in relation to this. Yeah. I don't know if there is something more you want to add to this. No.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. At the back, I don't think you can see me, but I just had a question regarding what you said to the brother before, when you said that he follows Sayyid Sistani, so he has, I don't know if this was covered before, unfortunately I didn't make it from the beginning, but you said to him that he has no choice but to follow Sayyid Sistani because he's chosen to follow Sayyid Sistani, right? Is that what you said? I couldn't really hear clearly. Okay, so it was just really a question about that in regards to when you said that he has no choice but he has to follow him. That sounds like it's a wajibat, like it's something mandatory like salah or saum. And I was just a little bit, I mean, I don't understand where we get that, where does that come from? Like in terms of, I have to follow him now because he said that. I mean, from what I understand, when Imam Sadiq was presented with all the different rulings, he approved of all of them, even though they probably could have been just one correct one. But he, he approved of all of them, and he said, I guess in terms of practicality or everybody interpreting things differently, as long as you have that thing that you've done, you're sincere to yourself and you have done the best that you, in terms of your research or who you're following, etc. So why is it then, it's just a question, a genuine question in terms of, I don't know if I'm missing something, how come we have this thing then that you have to follow him, one person for the same thing, unless they're saying, okay, no, you can follow someone else.
Thank you. Your question, I will respond specifically in relation to the question prior to that and my response to the young man prior to that. We, as a community, for example, have been brought up. We have been brought up in a particular way. We have been told what taqleed is, what salat is, how it is supposed to be prayed, what we are supposed to do. The moment you became baligh, sister, probably you were told that you need to do a taqleed of someone for your a'mal to be accepted. Otherwise, your salat is not accepted, your saum is not accepted. You chose someone at that time. Probably you did not know who you were choosing. You were ignorant of that fact. So we were told to choose someone.
Actually, sorry, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Unfortunately, I didn't actually grow up in a Khoja community.
Okay.
So I actually didn't have that, and that's why I think I probably have this confusion. I didn't attend like madrasa, you know, the standard Khoja madrasa. I actually attended an Arab madrasa, and they didn't have this this idea, like this concept, sort of. And that's why, you know, now that I'm a little bit more kind of, you know, involved with the Khoja community, you know, and this is something new for me. You know, so I actually didn't have that sort of upbringing.
Okay, so that is what the community has been brought up. That was the environment that was given to them. Their understanding was that they need to follow someone, and that someone needed to be the most learned man on this planet. And once you were able to establish that he was the most learned male on the planet, you were not able to then follow anyone else, because logic then demanded that you follow only the most learned man. And that is why I responded to him. So if I don't know who the question was from, but if that individual found the individual he is following to be the most learned man on the planet, then he had no choice but to follow him. And that's what I meant.
Shekhar, do you want to add to that? Or?
Yes, you are right, absolutely. It doesn't make sense, this doing taqleed of one person and the most learned. First and foremost, there is no notion of establishing who the most learned is, either in methodology or each given fatwa. Both of them are impossible as each other. Two, you can have a girl of 7 years old who can be most learned in one masala, and everybody would have to, by rational principle, have to follow her. Similarly, the people in commerce, the people in medicine, they are the most learned in their own area. So you don't follow a marja, you follow them instead. Two, the whole notion that the mujtahid bears responsibility for the mukallaf, yes, it is something that is there, we find in Imam Sadiq's hadith, but only when the mukallaf does not feel that the mujtahid is making a mistake. If a mukallaf feels that the mujtahid is wrong here, then in that case the mukallaf is not absolved by following any mujtahid, because they are responsible to God directly themselves. Yes, it overpowers. Three, taqleed, as Ayatollah Sistani himself says, contrary to Makarim Shirazi, Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, is an individual prerogative and choice. It's nothing to, taqleed in itself is nothing to do with taqleed. Yes? The choice of choosing one over the other is nothing to do with taqleed at all. So one, when we can't establish alamiyah, because the whole thing is nonsensical. Two, in this world now there is no notion of alamiyah. The world is so sophisticated. It needs collective minds coming together. Three, if a person feels that the fatwa is totally not making sense, that they're not absolved in following that fatwa. Four, when they can't understand who the alam is, they are at full liberty, according to Ayatollah Sistani, to choose anyone to follow. Of course, I don't subscribe to that system myself, because it would just make mayhem, but I would postulate that we have this another collective sort of integration of the collective intellect and bring about something of ijtihad at that level in marja'iyah.
So do you want to?
Indeed, the system of the community, as I mentioned, I don't know about this room, but I know that the majority of the community worldwide has followed this particular system over the years. The idea of A'lamiyat is there within the books. It may be absurd. It may be something that is seen today, for example, that way. However, it is an idea that has been there within the system. I agree that it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to be able to establish an A'lam in this day and age. It is probably not possible to do so, or if it is, it's extremely difficult. But I certainly am in the same page to that. However, you may find many ahadith of Imam alayhi salatu wassalam. You may find a hadith which mentions about something. You may find another hadith which mentions something else. It will depend if the mukallaf was able to determine what the marja has made a mistake or not, then the mukallaf will be able to do what Shaykh has said. But if the mukallaf himself is jahil and has no clue whether the marja is making a difference or not, then the mukallaf will remain in that particular position of his.
No, I don't want to start responding. That's fine. I just wanted to respond to her in my opinion. That's fine.
So we have time for one more question, if there is any from the audience. Yes, the brother in the middle. In the middle.
Assalamu alaikum. If you'll allow me, I'd like to ask a non-fiqhi question. As we're approaching the nights of Qadr, and given the nights are so short, how should we approach these nights to derive maximum benefit?
Okay, you see, the a'mal that we have, right, they are collection of all the different prescriptions different imams have given, yes? Now, for sure, and with surety, in the time of the third imam, people did not place Qurans on their heads and did not, give the wasta of 12 imams because they weren't there. In the time of the Prophet, that amal was not done because the Quran wasn't even collected in a book, yes? Does that make sense? So they have come over time. All these amals have come over time. In Laylatul Qadr, of course, we are told to devote ourselves wholesomely. And we can then pick and choose from these beautiful du'as that the imams have recited. We can do dhikr of Allah, we can do salah, and whatever. But if somebody wants to do excessive devotions, yes, then, and they find that the window of 4 hours and 5 hours is not enough, I wouldn't see any problem in terms of the quality of devotion to begin to devote themselves from 7 o'clock in the evening and go on from there. It's not a problem at all, yes? Because what is important to Allah, there's a verse, Allah always talks about the heart within the Quran, always, always, always. They said to Nuh in Surah Hud. Nuh is mentioned in Surah Yunus and Hud, yes? It's beautifully mentioned. This Quran is phenomenal. They said, look at these people. They are the very lowly sort of status people of the world. Nuh says, look, I don't know what is in their heart. Allah knows best. But I'm not going to reject them because you find them despicable and deplorable in your eyes due to their status. Allah knows what is in their heart, and then Allah will deal with them. It's all to do with that quality of submission and wholesomeness. So I don't think there's any problem if you want to devote excessively to God and do whatever you want to do, to start from before sunset.
The night of Qadr is a grand night, and surely we need to approach it in the most submissive way before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But more importantly, we need to understand what this night of Qadr is and why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays emphasis on us understanding the greatness of this night when He says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. What do you know what Laylatul Qadr is? The Holy Prophet of Islam was retreating and used to go to the Ghar of Hira, and he used to meditate before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for many, many years. One fine day, after a lot of meditation and retreat, Jibreel speaks to him, comes to him, visits him. Surely for the Holy Prophet, that night was the night of Qadr, when this revelation was revealed to him. It was an opening. It was something that he was waiting for. It was something that was given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that particular day. Just taking inspiration from that. If the night of Qadr I am going to approach as I approach it every year, and am going to hold this Quran on my head and recite the supplications, the prescribed supplications, it will just be a normal Qadr that has just passed. It won't be the Qadr that better than 1,000 months, for example, خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. For me, the night of Qadr will be when I am able to get that which I have desired. I'm not talking about a dua, a supplication, but that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that link with Him, that night for me therefore becomes better than 1,000 months for my own self. If I am able to bring myself to that level and be able to see this night of Qadr as the night in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this book of His, and then be able to learn from it, then surely that will be the true approach to the night of Qadr.
Thank you very much to both speakers for being here and answering the questions. Inshallah, they'll still be around if you have any personal questions you'd like to ask. And with that, we'd like to close the session today. Before I close, though, I'd like to make an announcement that there is an Understanding Islam Study Day led by Dr. Chris Hewer on Saturday, the 2nd of August at Al-Mahdi Institute. If you would like any further information, please contact Farhana Kapasi. And with that, I'd like to end, and let's end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There will be suhoor provided, and that will be